Today on Chris Cookin' Nashville, we're doing carnivore ravioli. And guess what? It's not made out of slices of cheese. You guys want to stick around for this one. All right, y'all, I've been working on this one for a long time, trying to figure out how to solve some problems when you try to make something like carnivore ravioli. And I'm gonna show you the solution that I've come up with that lets us make the pasta, stuff the pasta, and thoroughly enjoy the pasta while sticking to a keto, ketovore, or carnivore diet, all depending on how you decide to customize this recipe. It's taken a lot of work to make this one what it is. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this. It's not the easiest recipe that I've ever created, but it is absolutely worth the work if you want to do something special for your family or to celebrate or for a holiday. Ravioli is considered one of those special foods that families share during special events. And I'm going to give you guys a brand new opportunity to do that while sticking to your proper human diet. Let me show you today how we do carnivore or keto or ketovore stuffed ravioli. So we're gonna add about equal parts of ricotta cheese to the meat. It doesn't have to be exact, and you don't have to add ricotta cheese. I just like it because it's gonna bind the actual meat filling together. Roughly equal parts of the ricotta to the Italian sausage. And then I have about 1/4 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese, whole milk, of course. That's up to you. It's whether you want it in there or not, but I like it. Makes it a little stringier. So we're gonna add that, and we're gonna mix that in really well. Seasonings are always optional, but for me, I'm gonna add in a teaspoon each of Italian seasoning, black pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, and then we're gonna taste it for salt, and we're gonna add 1 whole large egg as well. If you like it a little spicy, 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper is a really nice addition. 1 large egg is gonna help hold the filling together once it cooks. Now we're just gonna taste it for salt. Now, if you are concerned about raw egg, I understand. I'm not worried about it, but if you are, taste it before you add the egg, salt it, and then add the egg at the last. So there's our filling. We're gonna set that off to the side. We're gonna let that sit, and we're gonna make some sauce next. Now this is a totally optional step, but if you're trying to make a special dinner, maybe it's date night, maybe it's something important you're celebrating, whatever it is, this is a way to chef it up just a little bit more. And mozzarella mousse. If you're trying to do carnivore, skip this step. But if you're keto or ketovore, this is a really nice way to flavor this. 1 to 2 tablespoons, it's really up to you, of tomato paste. This is about 1.5 tablespoons for me. And then these are roasted red peppers. You can buy them in the jar like this. It's basically just water and sea salt, nothing funky. I'm gonna add in a few tablespoons of these. The texture is a little bit too thin, which can happen sometimes. You can add in some beef gelatin and some egg white powder, which is what I'm gonna do. I've got about 1.5 tablespoons of each. Just use enough that it kind of solidifies it down. If you need more, you can use a little bit more, but mix this in, let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes before you add more. Let's go ahead and dump those in, and let's mix it together. All right, so the texture has gotten thicker. Now all we need to do is taste it for salt, add a little bit if necessary, and then we're gonna set this off to the side, and it's gonna be time to make ravioli. Now all we need to do is make a batch of my latest carnivore pasta noodle, which I think is the best I've ever had, at least. I'm gonna link the video down below of exactly how I do it. Only difference is I'm gonna double the amount of cream cheese. Let's go ahead and make some noodle batter. So you'll notice I did not add any of the water to soften this to make it come out of a piping bag the way I do in the original recipe. That's because we don't actually need this to be as soft because we're not gonna be piping it out of such a small hole. So don't worry about adding any of the water. We're also gonna take about 1/2 cup of this, set it aside. I'll show you what we do with that later. I've spent a long time trying to figure out how to make the carnivore ravioli noodles work because there's a lot of problems with this. Number one, you have to be able to create some kind of carnivore noodle that's not like a slice of cheese. And no offense to anyone who does those recipes, I think that's super cool, but to me that's just not gonna taste like ravioli, so I needed some kind of carnivore noodle. Now I've solved that by having plenty of different versions and this one being my favorite. The more difficult problem to solve is how do you actually stuff a ravioli with a filling? When you make real ravioli, you are sticking 2 raw pieces of dough together around the filling and then it's cooking to become one thing. You can't do that with something like a carnivore pasta like this because it's a paste or a liquid or some other problem texture that doesn't allow you to put a filling on the inside. As soon as you cook it to make it solid, then you can't get it to stick together because now that it's cooked, it's 2 separate pieces of protein and proteins do not stick together when they're cooked. So here's my solution. You're gonna need a bunch of parchment paper and we are going to make some incredible carnivore ravioli across multiple sheets of parchment. The first thing you're going to need is a large pot of hot water. Eventually we're going to be cooking the ravioli in this, but in the meantime, our parchment paper goes inside. Now we're just going to take the parchment paper out, let the extra water drain off back into the pan, but you'll see that the parchment paper is now soft. And this is really important. I tried doing this with dry parchment paper, and unfortunately, as soon as the wet mixture for the ravioli hits the parchment paper, it causes all of these wrinkles you see, which isn't necessarily a huge deal, but when it happens after you've already put pasta mixture on here, it causes ridges, and those ridges make it almost impossible to keep these sealed. Let me show you how we're gonna do this. We're gonna lay this out nice and flat, and you're going to push this down. Hopefully you have a large countertop or a tabletop. Try to get as many of the wrinkles out as you can and just kind of stretch it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's gonna stick down just like that. Next, we're gonna grab our piping bag with our pasta mixture, and we're gonna squeeze that down into the tip. Now, on my pasta video, a bunch of people said they struggle with how to use piping bags. I didn't really think about the fact that that might be a problem for someone, so here's how you're gonna use a piping bag. You're gonna squeeze everything down until you get pressure right here. You're gonna come at the top of the mixture and twist, and that way it can't go this direction when you squeeze. Keep your finger there, keep that pinched so that it can't untwist, and then you can use pressure from both hands to put pressure in a downward direction. So if you struggle with a piping bag, that helps. And then every time you reset, squeeze all the mixture down, twist it again, and continue on down. So now we're gonna cut a tip off of the piping bag. It doesn't have to be very large, but you do want it to come out fairly easily because we did not soften that mixture. So I'm gonna cut it a little bit smaller around than a pencil. Doesn't really matter the exact size, you just need it to be big enough that it'll come out, but small enough you can control it. Now we're gonna start piping dots for a ravioli noodle, and I'm gonna do these about a tablespoon. You can use a spoon if you prefer instead of a piping bag and just scoop it out and put them in little blobs. I think the piping bag is easier and it's a whole lot faster, but it's gonna be about a tablespoon of the mixture. When you pipe, make sure you have at least 3 to 4 inches of area. Go right into the center. Just like that. Move over about 4 or 5 inches. Do the same thing. Next, we're gonna grab another piece of our parchment paper. Do the same thing, drain the extra water. This is gonna get laid over the top. Now we're gonna grab something with a flat bottom. It needs to be a perfectly flat bottom, so you could use a saucepan if you have one that has a flat bottom, or a bowl like this, something that is nice and flat, because we're now going to, from the inside, put pressure with our hand straight down, very much like a tortilla press. Now we're just gonna cut these apart into individual ravioli. You can reuse your parchment paper, or if you don't mind using a bit more, you can just keep doing sheet after sheet after sheet and stacking these up until it's time to cook. It's entirely up to you. All right, so I have a pot of simmering water. You do not want this boiling hard. So we have that. We have all of our ravioli noodles that are still raw. I ended up getting 40 out of that. And then I have that leftover chicken that we're going to use. And there's a little bit left in the piping bag. I just added it into that. I'll show you what we're gonna do with that here in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and cook our ravioli noodles. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take each one before you drop it into the water. It's still between its pieces of parchment paper. Set it flat on the counter and just kind of pull sideways and just push a little bit. It just kind of helps pull any of those extra large ridges out, and the noodle goes into the water. We're going to simmer this for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the temperature of your water and the thickness of your noodle. It's gonna change color. You're gonna see when it's totally cooked, it will change to a lighter color with less pink. And when it's done, we can go ahead and pull it out, set it on a cookie sheet. We're just gonna keep going through this and doing them 1, 2, 3, 4 at a time, depending on how big of a pot you have. Now that all the ravioli are cooked, all we need to do is unwrap our noodles, and then I'll show you how we assemble these and cook them a second time. All right, so we have all of our noodles taken off of the parchment paper. Now all we're gonna do is take pears and we're going to try to match them in size as best you can. Hopefully they're all close enough in size that they'll all work. We're gonna take pairs of them and I'm gonna show you how we fill them. So come on over here and let's show you how we make some ravioli. Remember that leftover chicken mixture we had? That is right here, and I've cut a much smaller hole on the tip of this piping bag. We're going to pipe a bead around the outside of the ravioli, put our stuffing in the middle, and seal it that way. And then when we cook it a second time, we have a carnivore ravioli all sealed up. Watch this. I also have my ravioli filling in a piping bag. You could do this with a spoon, but I have some extras and this is a whole lot easier. So we're gonna pipe that right into the middle. It's very tempting to overfill your ravioli. Careful not to. All we need to do is put the second noodle on top. And if you carefully go around the sides, push all that together, you can see that is sealing all the way around the outside with that bead. And there's our ravioli. All we have to do is cook it to seal the rest of that chicken mixture on the outside. There's a couple of ways you can cook these once they're formed and you're ready to seal them. The easiest way I'll show you in just a minute, but you can do it this way as well. If you're real confident that you know how to get that sealed, you can take your hot water, and this is at about 200 to 205 degrees. You do not want it boiling because if it's kicking around, it's gonna break this apart and you'll get water inside your ravioli, and that's not fun. Just barely starting to simmer, you can put these in very gently, 2 to 3 minutes. That'll cook them and seal them. After a couple of minutes in the simmering water, we have a beautiful carnivore ravioli. Now that way you have to be a little bit more delicate and you gotta be a little confident that that is absolutely sealed. Let me show you something a little bit easier. We're gonna use a steamer basket. I'm gonna line this with some parchment paper. I'm gonna go ahead and make the rest of my ravioli and I'm gonna stack them in here very gently. We're gonna steam them probably 5 to 7 minutes or until they are cooked all the way around the edges. Just double check. You'll see that that chicken has gotten firm and again, it's changed color. And then we can do them all at once. So here's all of our ravioli stacked into our steamer basket, ready to go. We're gonna steam these for probably 5 to 7 minutes. Depending on how long it takes to cook, I'll let you know exactly how long they were in there. And then it's gonna be time to plate up. All right, y'all, that's how we do the carnivore ravioli. Lots of fun. I think this is gonna be really tasty. I've worked a long time and a hard amount of effort to try to get this recipe just right. Ash had my first sort of test batch of these, but I was not nearly as good at it, and I have modified it since, so it'll be really interesting to see what she thinks about this compared to the first ones that I made for her, which she already said were good, but I think these are gonna be a lot better. Let's see what she thinks.
They look really pretty.
Mm-hmm.
They look really pretty. Oh my. That is incredible. So the ravioli itself literally tastes just like with your pasta. It literally tastes just like how I remember like standard American diet ravioli tasting. There's no taste of chicken. There's no taste of egg. Soft, but yet sturdy enough. I love how you have these stuffed. Man, those are good. Can't get over how the taste and the texture though, how just like spot on that is. So freaking good.
Absolutely. This recipe is a labor of love. It is not one of my easiest recipes by any means. It's not that any of the particular steps are difficult. There are just a lot of steps. But Ash and I were talking about this. Ravioli is in and of itself a more involved dish. Like as pasta dishes go, ravioli is not usually the kind of thing that you just randomly sit down and whip out in 20 minutes on a random weeknight. Ravioli is usually saved when you're making it from scratch for like celebrations and holidays and special meals and that kind of stuff, because just regular ravioli, standard American diet, handmade pasta, hand stuffed from scratch, all that kind of stuff. That takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of work to make regular ravioli. This honestly was no harder than making regular ravioli from scratch. It's just we're not opening a can or a bag or a box where someone else has already made it. So there is more effort there. But compared to standard American diet ravioli, I would say this was very comparable in both time and effort.
But like if it was like my birthday or it, you know, if I wanted to do something, this would be like what I would do. Also, I would actually be super surprised if you fed this to somebody that was a standard American diet. Like if you took this to a party or something and people just didn't know the difference. I mean, this is so incredibly good. Mind blown.
I think it's a great recipe. And for those of you guys that are dairy-free, you could easily do some kind of a dairy-free sauce, like a browned butter. If you don't even do butter, you know, you could do some kind of like a chicken stock that you could use the egg yolks to thicken the way I make gravy. I have several videos for gravy on here. If you're keto, you could do like a marinara or any other kind of sauce. So you can customize that however you want. But if you're dairy-free, you can leave out the cream cheese. Now you are going to get a much firmer texture and it's going to be a lot more like chicken meat than it's going to be like a noodle, because that cream cheese in there does affect the texture and keep it softer like a noodle. But if you're okay with that and you would rather go dairy-free, you can leave that cream cheese out of the chicken mixture. You might need to add just a little bit of water, sauce that was dairy-free, and do a filling that was dairy-free. Make any kind of filling you want. We did really heavy on the dairy tonight because we wanted to really celebrate and enjoy this recipe and all of the work that has gone into making it, but you wouldn't have to do that. So
that was seriously so good though. I think it's been under 5 minutes and I ate everything else on that plate.
Absolutely amazing. This is wonderful. I would recommend everybody do it. All of my links are going to be down below, including the link to the recipe card page of my website where this recipe card will exist. And I'm going to put all of the different elements on there for it. If you guys are interested, you can support the channel and the work we do by joining the Patreon group or the YouTube memberships. Those options are down below for you as well. If nothing else, give us a like and a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Make sure you've subscribed. If you haven't yet, that should have lit up for you down there below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Chris Cook in Nashville, my beautiful wife, Ash Taylor. You guys eat your meat, even if it looks like ravioli. Love your life. We're going to see you right here in the kitchen for a whole bunch more crazy carnivore and keto recipes. And you guys should go check out this video about how to do my Alfredo sauce.
How do I get more of this? And then you put the papers in the pot and I was like, what? You have mastered the carnivore ravioli.